the more I sort of have been thinking about it, the more I think that I can build just a kind of coherent framework of theism that has access to a lot of explanatory power that atheism doesn't really have access to. And I know you're sort of partial to the definition.
I didn't understand what you say. What is it that theism has access to that atheism doesn't?
So I think it has a breadth of explanatory power that atheism doesn't. So I'm basically thinking.
Well, I would agree that theism is an attempt to explain something that atheism does not attempt to explain. But when we talk about explanatory power, we explain the unknown in terms of the known. We can't solve a mystery by appealing to a bigger mystery. So God has no explanatory power. It's functionally identical to Magic Man done it, Magic Pixies done it.
Well, I think that you believe that, but I don't think that that's true. And I agree with you that you explain the unknown in terms of the known, and that's why I think that you can.
Okay, so show me a known God, and I'll accept it as an explanation.
All right, sure. I have to go through a few arguments. I hope you're okay. Can I just ask you, how would you feel about are you invested in being an atheist or anything like that, or if theism is true, do you want to be a theist?
I'm invested in the truth.
Yeah,
I'm invested in knowing what's real and what's not real.
Okay. All right. I mean, I have a few premises that I can see being sort of objectionable. I'll sort of go through them and kind of explain my reasoning along those lines. The first is a modus tollens argument, and I can understand that. I can understand a modus tollens argument.
Okay.
It just takes,
just do it.
It just takes the form. Okay. All right. Sure. So. If atheism is true, then naturalism is true.
Well, we have to stop.
Yeah.
We have to stop.
Okay.
And it's in part because there's terms that need to be defined.
Yeah.
So instead of saying if atheism is true, I would think that what you would want to say is if there is no God, because atheism is the position of being not convinced there's a God, and it's inclusive of being convinced there are no gods, but it's not necessarily an assertion that there is no God. So wouldn't it be better to start with the premise that says, if there is no God, then X?
Yeah, that's just what I mean by atheism.
Yeah, but that's not how we use it, and there's tons of confusion. So if it's far more clear to just say, if there is no God, then.
All right, okay, so that's fine. I don't have any problem. If there is no God, then naturalism is true. Naturalism is false. Therefore, there is at least one God. That's
okay.
That's the first argument. And
so naturalism is false is a big fat assertion.
Yeah. So that's the second premise. And so I basically take that to be justified by something called the rule following paradox. I don't know if you've ever heard of the rule.
I'm having a hard time understanding you, but go ahead, demonstrate that naturalism is false, and we'll call and get your Nobel Prize. Okay,
well, so I don't think that the Nobel Prize is like a scientific award, to my understanding.
Is that how Obama got his Nobel Prize, was through science? There's a lot of potential.
Well,
if you don't think that if you don't think that demonstrating that naturalism is false wouldn't get you something the equivalent of a Nobel Prize, I don't know what to tell you, because you're essentially claiming naturalism is false when that's still one of the biggest open questions in all of philosophy. And by the way, if you're talking about philosophical naturalism, that's the position that the supernatural isn't real. That's functionally different from methodological naturalism, which is just we don't have the capacity to investigate beyond the natural.
No, so I think that you can't. I think that non-natural causation would be something that's not accessible through sciences, right? Because I think it's under.
Okay, so let me make sure I understood this. I want to make sure I understand. I want to make sure I understand this. You just said you think that non-natural causes are something that cannot be confirmed.
Not through sciences, no.
What other way would there be to confirm?
Well, I think that there's the same way intentional explanations are sort of underdetermined by physical facts. So are things like historical facts. So it would be along the same lines that there are certain predictions that you would expect on intentional hypotheses or non-natural hypotheses. And I said non-natural because I take the intentional to be non-natural, and that's basically what my argument is about. But so I want to avoid the question begging, but I think that you can still make predictions. It's just that those predictions aren't law-like like they are in the sciences. So it would be similar methodology based on predictions, and you can have inferences and you can have justified beliefs, but it's not a law-like generalization, right? So like if some prediction isn't borne out by some intentional explanation, it doesn't show that that intention wasn't there, for example, or that non-natural cause, if you want to put that.
Okay, but it's not our job to show that the intentionality wasn't there. It is the job of those proposing that the intentionality is there to demonstrate that that's the case.
Well, no, I think that I take evidence to be sort of parasitic on disconfirmation as well. So like if you expect to see something on the truth of some hypothesis, you can conclude that when you don't see that observation, that hypothesis is not true. I mean, all things being equal. I think there are a lot of caveats that the philosophy of science has made, right?
That's massive caveats. So if you take it to something like, if Matt was cheating at cards, I would expect him to win. But that expectation may be false. It may be that Matt is cheating at cards and I'm cheating with a partner and they're the ones that are winning. So
right.
It's playing strip poker.
I agree. I think,
but the way to demonstrate that I am in fact cheating at cards has nothing to do with, well, if Matt was cheating, I would expect this. You would actually need evidence for the proposition that I'm cheating, not merely this is something that would be consistent. Because when we talk about things like the origins of the universe, it may or may not be consistent with a god. In fact, I would argue that there are plenty of proposed gods that, while they're at least hypothetically capable of creating a universe, would have no interest in creating a universe. So you can't do the on theism, we would expect there to be a universe, when it's possible that on theism, we would expect there to not be a universe.
Well, I haven't gotten to my argument yet.
We're still the first one. I'm trying to figure out how you falsified naturalism.
Right, and I can give you, I was going to give you an argument, but then the conversation sort of went a different direction. And
all I asked for, fine,
kind of
how did you falsify naturalism?
Right, so I think the basic idea, I haven't formalized the rule-following paradox, so you'll have to kind of bear with me. I'll explain the premises, but the rule-following paradox is that if you take a rule and a deviant rule, so like an example is plus and quus, and the idea with those is that if you add numbers together, then they give you some total. So for example, 2 plus 2 is 4, and that rule is going to be the same for something like, or similar at least, for something like a rule we're calling quus. And the quus rule is that for every what would be in other cases addition above the integer 50, you're going to return the result 4. So like you can see that in like a programming language, like you have an idea of what that would be, right? So if I do 25 and 26, then I'll get 4 back, right? But if I do 25 and 26 and we're following the addition rule, then what we'll get back is 51. So you kind of understand what I'm saying there?
Mm-hmm. Yes, this is sounding very much like, hey, there's a pattern here that doesn't fit, so I'm going to come up with an ad hoc explanation for it, and as long as it's consistent with it, then I'm going to claim that I'm right.
Well, see that, like right there, you're projecting motivations, and like in the beginning of the call, you said that you weren't going to do that.
I'm not saying that's what your motivation is. I'm saying that this is what that sounds like. So the way to demonstrate that there's actually a rule change after 50 is to get the data and assess for a rule change after 50. It's like when there's one of the best puzzle games of all time is Jonathan Blow's The Witness. And one of the things that it does is it teaches you how to solve panels. There's no instructions. There's nothing. You begin by kind of experimenting, and then you figure out the rules for the things that are going in the pattern. And later on in the game, you will find that there are exceptions to the rules. But the way to discover what the rules are and what the exceptions are is through testing. So we're not outside the realm of scientific inquiry here at all.
Well, I'll explain that, right? Because I think that in that response, you beg the question, and I think I'll explain why.
Okay.
So the idea is that
I don't know how I could possibly beg the question when all I've done is ask questions about your position, and then point out that what you described is not sufficient to establish a pattern. It's functionally identical. It's functionally identical to an ad hoc.
Well, if you want to know why I think you're begging the question, I'll explain that if you want. Or I can move on and I can just continue to explain the argument, but it's up to you.
Well, I still want to know how you falsified naturalism. And by the way, I'm not going to. I have a guest. Try harder. Falsify naturalism.
Well, listen. Yeah, you're going to have to follow the line of reasoning in order for me to do that. I mean,
define naturalism. Define naturalism.
All that exists is studyable by the natural sciences.
No.
That's what I defined it as.
Okay. That's not the definition that I am aware of.
Oh, well, we can work with your definition. I mean, tell me if you think that there's something inconsistent. Like, I'm fine.
So, were you saying that if atheism is false, so if there is no God, then it's not like then there is nothing that
all things that exist are studyable by the natural sciences.
Okay, no. Okay, this is a huge problem because naturalism, philosophical naturalism, is the assertion that the natural world is all that exists. It has nothing to do with the method by which you can study it. That's methodological naturalism. And methodological naturalism does not assert that everything that exists can be studied through the natural exploration. All it does is recognize that we have no way to investigate things beyond the natural. So you're like
real quickly,
you're conflating three different things, and this is why the initial argument, which was essentially if there is no God, then naturalism is true, and then your second premise is naturalism is false. Well, naturalism, in a philosophical sense, is only natural things exist. So now your argument becomes if there is no God, then only natural things exist. And then premise two is something other than natural things exists. Therefore,
yeah. So
what is the thing other than naturalism that exists?
Well, can I just real quick? When you say things like I guess basically what you're saying is that on the second premise, I kind of equivocate between types of naturalism, right? But if I can, I want to interrupt you when you say something that I think is wrong, but then you continue talking, and it's hard for us to have a dialogue that way. And so if you're okay, if you say something that I object to and I try to interrupt, can you just respect that, and then I'll do the same thing for you?
Yeah, that's what I thought we were doing. I didn't hear you trying to interrupt there. So,
okay,
premise one: if there is no.
So before we go on, so when you define naturalism, you said all that exists is natural, right?
That's philosophical naturalism. That only the natural world exists.
That's right. Yeah. So that is an uninformative definition, and so the reason it's an uninformative definition is because it incorporates the natural, which is what we are trying to figure out, right?
You're getting hung up on the words.
I gave my definition.
You're getting hung up on the words.
I'm trying to explain. I don't think it's getting hung up on the word because
Here,
what I'm trying to explain.
Naturalism is the assertion that only physical things exist. Now, I didn't use the same word twice.
Okay, sure. And I think the analysis of physical there is going to be consistent with what I said, which is the physical is sort of things that are the law-like relations that are studied by the sciences.
No.
Right.
You're conflating what the ontology of what something is with the methodology by which we study it. You are conflating those two things. Stay away from the fucking methodology and just talk about the ontology.
Well, so I think that it's not really possible to talk about our conceptions of ontology without talking about our beliefs about ontology. And so I think that there's a property of the natural such that it implies that it's studyable, right? And so that's why I'm giving a sort of conceptual analysis of.
Okay, now we're into completely different territory. Is there something about the non-natural that implies it's not studyable?
There's no law-like relations. So the thing that's different about science is, and what they study is that there are law-like relations between the predictions and the laws, and that's not the case with things that are non-scientific that we can still make predictions about.
What? Give me an example of something not. Give me holy shit!
I'll give you an example. Yeah.
Well, I didn't even ask. You don't even know what I want an example of. Give me an example of the best peanut butter.
The best peanut butter?
Give me an example. So you just were. So for me, when somebody says naturalism is false, that means they have some way that they can show that naturalism is not true, which means they can demonstrate that something supernatural is true. Correct?
Well, something non-natural.
Okay. I'm putting non-natural and supernatural as co-equivalent for this, but so give me an example of something non-natural that is true.
I believe that P. I think that's an example of something that's non-natural.
I believe what?
Non-natural true proposition.
We're done.
I think that
we're done. I asked for. I wanted an example of something non-natural, and all you did was give an abstract that has no content.
Well, I think that beliefs exist. Beliefs are concrete objects, and
beliefs are concrete objects.
Non-natural.
Beliefs are concrete objects.
Yeah, in the philosophical sense of concrete, right? Yeah.
Okay.
Beliefs are contingently true. They're not necessarily true. I don't necessarily have these beliefs.
They map to brain states.
Well, I think that that was what I was giving the rule following arguments specifically against. That view of naturalism.
Wow. So I don't know that we're going to get anywhere, and I don't think that I really want to waste more time, because when you say that naturalism is false, I'm expecting someone to provide an example of something non-natural that exists. Not, here's an abstract concept, because those things don't exist.
No, I think that beliefs exist, right?
Well, I don't.
I think that beliefs are not reducible to brain states.
Okay.
Well, we can talk about that.
Congratulations. Congratulations. I'm happy you believe that. But what you believe is not an example of something that is. Well, so, for example, if we remove every mind from the universe, are there still beliefs?
No.
Okay. So beliefs are contingent upon minds.
Of course beliefs are contingent upon minds. Minds are composed of beliefs.
So if beliefs are contingent on minds, how is that in any way a demonstration that beliefs exist as concrete things if they are in fact contingent upon minds and they have no substance or demonstration of their own? And by the way, how do I tell what you believe and how do you tell what I believe?
Okay, so there are a couple questions there. And your first question, I think, presupposes some confusions. So we'll talk about that, right?
I'm not presupposing anything. It's a question.
But you're familiar with the term loaded question, right? Loaded questions have presuppositions.
Yes.
Right?
I'm never mind. Go ahead.
Right, and so when you say there are no minds, if there are no minds in the universe, then are there beliefs? The answer is no. But I take minds to be concrete objects composed of beliefs. So it's like saying something like, if there are no beliefs, are there no beliefs? The answer to that is trivial, right?
If I have a JPEG image on my hard drive, and that's the only place that it is, it's just a collection of ones and zeros that a computer then can interpret and display in a particular way, and I destroy that hard drive, does that image exist?
No.
Okay. If I still have the hard drive and it's not connected to any computer to interpret that and display the interpretation, does that image exist?
No.
Okay.
But I think that, what I think that you're doing there is you're trying to draw this analogy. You're trying to make an argument from an analogy for brains and minds, right? And I think I agree. I agree that, in fact, I think it's central to my view that brains can exist without minds.
I'm sure that it is. How could you?
Well,
no, stop.
Can I just finish this last?
No. No.
Well, do you disagree with what I said about my?
Yes, that's the whole reason I'm interrupting. I thought we agreed that when we hit a point of disagreement, we were going to do the interruption thing. I'm not aware of any. I'm not aware of any example of a mind existing absent a brain. Are you?
Well, I think God is that, and again, I think we want to talk about that because there's a lot of inferences that build to that.
Yes, right? And compound inferences are as bad as compound interest. That's another video that I'm doing this week, by the way, so thanks for letting me get that out. But you're convinced that there is a mind absent a brain. How could you demonstrate that?
I'll continue to give the account if you want, but we stopped at when I was laying out the rule-following paradox. So if you want to go back to the rule-following paradox...
No,
and then
I want you to demonstrate a mind without a brain. Because
how am I supposed to do that without giving?
That's not my fucking problem. You're the one that's convinced you that you have.
Give the argument.
Goodbye.
I'm trying to give the.
If you call in because you have a position and you give a reasoned argument, you don't get to complain. How could I ever demonstrate it? That's the point. Sorry, that was a philosophical parade of confusion.
Yeah, it's not my area of expertise.
Pick the next person we want to talk to.
Okay.